gentlemen, we have called you together to inform you that we are going to overthrow the United States government.
Our leaders have told us that the war on terror may last 100 years. The new kind of war against a shadowy enemy that can never be defeated.
Either you are with us, or you are with the terrorists.
We now know for sure the deep state multinational combine, in concert with their slave colony China, launched the COVID-19 bioweapon attack in November of 2019, scripted the hysteria, hyped up the deaths, choreographed into the world I Am Legend, Omega Man, Last Man on Earth, zombie apocalypse visions, set the precedent to roll out that whenever a contagious virus hits that can kill 5,000, 20,000, 100,000 like the flu does routinely in the United States, we are meant to fall down on our faces in abject fear. Cash must be banned. We must take digital microchips to track us. Bill Gates' fingerprints are all over it, and now it's hitting mainstream news. But let me make the ultra, incredibly massive announcement here. Russia and the UK, both articles are on Infowars.com, came out last night while we were sleeping in the early morning hours, and both said it is no longer a threat. It is no longer even rated as a danger statistically, and we are ending quarantine operations. This is a hoax. Paul Joseph Watson, no need for quarantine in Russia, which closed its borders. UK downgrades COVID-19, no longer a high consequence infectious disease. Ultra massive bombshell. But there's absolutely no coverage in the U.S. media. Instead, there is breathless fear-mongering in the most obvious ways. Run for the hills, we're all dead. There's no hope. Jump out of buildings. And people are committing suicide. Got a big stack of articles on that front. We're going to walk through all of this, but it gets better. Senator Hawley of Missouri and Senator Cotton have both come out, ladies and gentlemen, and said the Chi-Coms knew it was killing people, because it does kill old and does kill sick. It's a real virus. But these type of viruses always are coming through that kill tens of thousands per country. And they knew and lied about it and incubated it. And then once they covered it up, then they said it was more deadly than originally as a way to politically and economically hurt us. And Trump came out in a press conference last night, that clip's coming up, and said the Democrats want to extend this crisis to hurt the economy and hurt my re-election. And that is absolutely what they want. They admit it. They've said, we hope it hurts Trump. We hope it hurts the economy. We want to plunge it there. And now you've got Kathy Griffin and all the usual suspects saying they have it and it's so painful and they're victims, and all the other globalists have it. Tom Hanks and Prince Charles. It's ridiculous how obvious it is. In fact, it's not even obvious. They admit that they are doing it. So I'm going to get into no need for hard quarantine in Russia. They say it's not a problem. And UK downgrades COVID-19, no longer a high consequence infectious disease. The Four Nations Public Health HCID group made an interim recommendation to classify COVID-19 as HCID. This was based on consideration of the UK HCID criteria about the virus and the disease with information available during the early stages of the outbreak. So back then they said not a high consequence.
Gentlemen, we have called you together to inform you that we are going to overthrow the United States government. Do you still think that jet fuel brought down the World Trade Center? Does anybody else see a problem here? If the government has nothing to hide, why are they so afraid to answer a few questions? This story does not add up.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The title of this report is A Satirist's Dream, Closing the Gap Between Anti-Corruption Law and Reality. I could fill my 60 seconds talking about the 18 years' worth of unaudited accounts, or the bazillions that are squandered on agriculture and foreign aid boondoggles, or the Tillack case where instead of any of the alleged fraudsters being arrested, it was the journalist trying to find out about them who found himself banged up by the police. I could talk about the £6.6 million spent last year by European commissioners simply on entertainment and luxury gifts and hotels. I could talk about the wonderful spectacle of President Van Rompuy and Commissioner Ashton flying to the same meeting in Russia in separate private jets, leaving Brussels within 4 hours of each other. Instead, I'll confine myself to saying this. These things happen not because the EU attracts particularly bad people. I mean, of course it attracts some bad people, man is fallen, and like all institutions it contains those who give in to temptation. It happens rather because there is no link between taxation, representation and expenditure at Brussels level. It was Milton Friedman who said there's two kinds of money in the world, there's your money and there's my money. The trouble is that in the EU it's all your money, hence negligence, corruption, fraud and what we see before us today.
Mr. Co-President Nigel Farage, Freedom and Democracy.
Well, good morning, Mr Van Rompuy. You've been in office for 1 year, and in that time the whole edifice is beginning to crumble. There's chaos. The money's running out. I should thank you. You should perhaps be the pin-up boy of the Eurosceptic movement. But just look around this chamber this morning. Just look at these faces. Look at the fear. Look at the anger. Poor old Barroso here looks like he's seen a ghost. You know, they're beginning to understand that the game is up, and yet in their desperation to preserve their dream, they want to remove any remaining traces of democracy from the system. And it's pretty clear that none of you have learned anything. You know, when you yourself, Mr Van Rompuy, say that the euro has brought us stability, I suppose I could applaud you for having a sense of humour, but isn't this really just the bunker mentality? You know, your fanaticism is out in the open. You talked about the fact that it was a lie to believe that the nation state could exist in a 21st century globalised world. Well, that may be true in the case of Belgium, who haven't had a government for 6 months, but for the rest of us, right across every member state in this union, and perhaps this is why we see the fear in the faces, increasingly people are saying, we don't want that flag, we don't want the anthem, we don't want this political class, we want the whole thing consigned to the dustbin of history. And we had the Greek tragedy earlier on this year, and now we have the situation in Ireland. Now I know that the stupidity and greed of Irish politicians has a lot to do with this. They should never ever have joined the euro. They suffered with low interest rates, a false boom and a massive bust. But look at your response to them. What they're being told, as their government's collapsing, is that it would be inappropriate for them to have a general election. In fact, Commissioner Wren here said they had to agree their budget first before they'd be allowed to have a general election. Just who the hell do you think you people are? You are very, very dangerous people indeed. Your obsession with creating this euro state means that you're happy to destroy democracy. You appear to be happy for millions and millions of people to be unemployed and to be poor. Untold millions must suffer so that your euro dream can continue. Well, it won't work, because it's Portugal next. With their debt levels of 325% of GDP, they're the next ones on the list, and after that I suspect it will be Spain. And the bailout for Spain would be 7 times the size of Ireland, and at that moment all of the bailout money has gone. There won't be any more. But it's even more serious than economics, because if you rob people of their identity, if you rob them of their democracy, then all they are left with is nationalism and violence. I can only hope and pray that the euro project is destroyed by the markets before that really happens.
Thank you.
They cannot create the world of Orwell. They have to manipulate us to create it. And what they're doing all the time, and a lot of this stuff in the movies, which are feeding you what they want to happen. Look at all the movies over the last, decade or so, more and more now all the time, that are portraying this very police state and this very Orwellian fascist Agenda 21 world that I've been talking about. They're doing that for a reason. It's to implant that in the subconscious so it becomes reality through humans' creative imagination. They have to get us to do it. Number one, the fascist global state is not coming because we're not fricking having it anymore. And we are not any longer going to be manipulated into manifesting our own enslavement. And when they tell us to be quiet, we shout bloody louder. Silence is consent. Can you hear us now? If you want to be free, then don't run and hide. This is a time for looking the world in the bloody eye. Together. Coming together. Strength does not come from physical capacity, it comes from indomitable will, Mahatma Gandhi. And that will says we are not having it anymore. Human race, get off your knees. What are you doing down there? Hey!